Time now to welcome someone who we can certainly describe as a high-achieving African, my guest Chi-chi Nwanoku. She's the principal and co-founder of the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment. Let's take a quick listen to Chi-chi at work. Did your African roots play a part in how your sort of music developed over the years?
That goes without saying. It really did, because my father was always singing at home, and shortly after that piano experience, the actual family wheeled their piano up the road and gave me my first instrument. They gave me that piano, and the following week I started having piano lessons, and my father rushed out and actually bought a book of Negro spirituals, which was quite extraordinary. But the sentiment in those songs and the harmonies are just beautiful. And we used to sing around the piano with Dad really leading the way, really. He had a fantastic bass baritone, and we all sang in harmony, and I just learnt to play them. And of course I was learning other pieces as well, but this was one of the things we used to stand around the piano and do at home, because we didn't have a TV or anything like that.
And so you've not only been a musician, you've also been quite a sort of high-level athlete as well, haven't you? So how did your sort of sports life play a role in things, in the life story?
Well, I think we all kind of grew up as much outside the house as we did inside the house. We didn't have toys. We created our own activities, which were usually pretty athletic and competitive, and we ran around and did things. And literally a year after I got my piano, when I was 8 years old, I was at the Canterbury and District Primary School Sports, and I was a natural fast runner. I've got fast twitch muscles, as you can probably tell. And the school, I represented my school in the sprint race, and little did I know that there was a sprint coach there touting for talent, and he coached the sprinters of the Canterbury Athletic Club, because we lived about 4 miles outside of Canterbury. And before I knew it, he had meetings with my parents, my school teacher, my headmaster, because he said, look, I'm looking to bring on a sprinter. This girl has got, because I think I left everybody miles behind. and he said, I'd love to do something with this talent. And my parents said, look, she's a very busy girl already. She's already learning, has her outside school, she's learning music and piano, and plus, this is expensive. And he said, no, it's not going to cost you a penny. I want to train her. And so twice a week, he would collect me from my house, drive me into Canterbury, and I had 2-hour coaching sessions with him. And then I reached national sprinting level, almost qualifying for Munich when I was 16.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so the return to music then, again, when you came back, you again were very much in international demand, weren't you?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, music, when I had my knee injury playing in a football match, which was just a one-off helping out a women's football team.
So it just happened out of the blue?
Out of the blue. I was probably going to Montreal. So I was in my last year at school, girls' grammar school, and I was doing A-level music, was one of my A-levels, and had a fantastic music master at my grammar school. And I ended up in hospital for 2 weeks with knee ligaments in pieces. And I was told that was the end of my career as a sprinter. And so, returned to school, head of music and headmistress put their heads together and said, this girl has got what it takes to actually have a career. And I didn't know what having a career in music was, because it wasn't something that was part of my family's ethos or what we did. My parents had medical jobs, and we were all sort of I hadn't applied to go to university either because I was going straight 100% into my athletics, which was all over in curtains. Luckily, I had the right guidance, and my head of music said, Chi-chi, if you could have a career in music if you took up a very unpopular orchestral instrument, and led me to the double bass, and I just said, well, it's huge, and have you seen how small I am? And then he said the right thing. He said, Chi-chi, when have you ever been put off by a challenge? And that was it. I was hooked.
Cool.
Yeah.
When it comes to sort of the work that you're known for here, Radio 3's Request shows, stuff on BBC Two, you're working on documentaries right now as well, so there's some fantastic, thought-provoking work that you're doing as well.
Yes, yes.
So tell us more about the new stuff that you've got.
Well, over the last few years, I've had lots of conversations where people have wanted to talk about the lack of diversity in classical music. And of course, I've just, for whatever reason, I have just kind of sailed through any blockages or nets, or without really paying attention to what might prevent me from achieving my dreams. And that's something that's very, very much come from my parents. My mother was always, you know, she was one that kind of politicized us, but you know, she was a fiery Southern Irish lady. But my father was this sturdy, focused man who just said, Chi-chi, go for your dreams. There's nothing that can stop you. And I just carried that always with me, because I'm a very literal person. If someone says jump, I don't just hop, I will jump. And he just said, go for it. And there was one point when I got into the Royal Academy of Music in my first year, after having had a 2-year crash course learning the double bass at what's now called Anglia Ruskin University in Cambridge. Had a 2-year crash course there, then got into the Royal Academy of Music. My parents came to the first concert I had there, and as I was packing up my double bass at the end of the concert, my parents happened to be, one of the tutors went and spoke to my parents, and so when I then rejoined my parents, my mother was looking really worried. And I said, what's the matter? And she said, one of your tutors has said you're not going to have a career in music because you're playing a man's instrument. And she was looking worried, and my father was just going, watch her. You know, and you know, so there's the gender thing, there's the colour thing, there's all the possible things that could be laid out in front of you that I could have visited and allowed to intimidate me.
And what did you take from the radio experience as well?
Well, I mean, to start with, I thought that was really strange, because I'm a natural performer. I'm used to walking onto the stage. I replaced one stage, which was the track, with another stage, which was the concert hall. So I'm used to a live audience and things like that. So when I was invited by the BBC Radio 3 to present a programme where you don't actually see your audience, I found that very strange to start with. And realised what a strong medium the radio is, because you're really reaching to people who are taking the trouble to sit and listen. They're not distracted by anything else. They're listening to you. And they said, you know, Chi-chi, we know the passion that you bring to a concert platform in your performances. Can you bring that through presenting a programme? So that was another challenge.
There we go. Tell you what, Chi-chi, an MBE for your services to music in 2001 as well, and also on the board of the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain. And you're doing some fantastic work out in Baltimore as well at the moment. But just the tip of the iceberg from your fantastic work. So thank you very much indeed for that. Welcome back to Talking Africa here on Arise News. Let's continue our conversation now with my guest, the acclaimed classical double bass player, professor and broadcaster, Chi-chi Nwanoku. So Chi-chi, let's start with the foundation that you've started, the Chi-chi Foundation, which aims to provide career opportunities to young black classical musicians in the UK. How tough a challenge has that been? Because it's not really an area where you'd find many minority, I guess, musicians, is it?
It isn't, not from what we see at the moment. You know, we're very used to going to concert halls, and you see an all-white orchestra, and no one questions it. But people in recent years have been starting to question it and speaking to me about it and what's going on. How come you're doing it, but where's everybody else? And of course, there's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't look like it does on the street, much more diverse. You know, show me a single child of any ethnicity when presented with music in the correct way, can't do it, or have an affinity with it in some way. A drop of musical talent with an opportunity and some support. And now, the reason that we see less and less people like me in classical music is that probably about 20, 25 years ago, all of the music programs were kind of taken out of the state schools, the free schools, and so, you know, most people who now play classical music are the ones with a lot of financial backing coming from their families and their private schools, and so my challenge has been to try and create a level playing field, try and find a way to give a platform and a voice to the underrepresented classical musicians that I know are out there in UK and Europe, actually. And my inspiration came from an incredible organisation in America called the Sphinx. They've been running about 18 years, and I've worked with them on and off over the last 10 years. This year I judged their competition in Detroit, and the standard is extraordinarily high. Now I know we've got young musicians like that here, and I've been finding them, and it's incredibly exciting, and it poses a really wonderful vision of what tomorrow's orchestras could look like.
How do you find them, and how do you nurture them then?
Well, because I only play in my orchestra is the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment, and of course I know a few people who I can begin to ask. I've got lots of friends in the profession, so from soloists down, you know, teachers and other performing colleagues, and I've written to a lot of my friends to say, can you help me? Do you know of? Is there somebody I should know about? And I've been knocked over by the number of them, and the standard as well, and of course, I'm not just getting people who just happen to own an instrument. They've got to be of a certain level, of course, because, you know, we're going to come in for a bashing probably, and it took me a while to find the name of the orchestra, of the foundation, and I literally leapt out of bed in the middle of the night one night shouting Chineke, and almost like eureka, you know. And I ran it past one of my dear cousins who works for the United Nations, Ahunna Eziakwamwa. She's down in Uganda, actually, working for the UN. And I ran it past her, and because Chineke, this word, you know, which means, well people declare it when something amazing happens. They say Chineke, and Chineke is, it's an actually pre-Christian word. It predates the Christianity that we know, that we grew up with. And Chi being a male and female beginning of or ending of many of our names, male and female names, and Neke being the creation. It's like the God of creation, of creation of all good things, even the rain and the trees and all diverse aspects. And for me, that was quite crucial. And therefore, that's the name of the ensemble.
Tell us about your plans for Europe's first black orchestra.
Well, with the blessing of so many of the major organisations in this country, from the British Council, the Arts Council, the Conservatoires UK, and then the South Bank Centre, when I went to them with this idea of Chineke Foundation, they were practically in tears. You know, they just said, Chi-chi, you know, there are so many outreach programmes going on in all the junior schools, and you know, the Mayor's Fund, I'm a patron for Boris's Mayor's Fund for Young Musicians, and they do outreach programs to the poorer areas, helping to give lessons and tuition to some of the less fortunate children. They're doing a great job, but this is the first time there's something concrete happening led by one of our own. And I think that could be quite a crucial step.
And has that been the problem in the past, do you think, that there's no real role model?
Because some of these schemes have been going for 6 or 7 years, and there's only one or two, well, a few coming through, who are still at junior college, junior academy, junior college, which is Saturday schools. But even that costs up to £4,000 per student, 11-year-old, what families have that kind of money? And so I'm looking for sponsorship and people who will believe in this vision and to help create that, and a lot of people are coming together over it because they believe it has to happen, and all the forces that are trying to see things change, I think because it's me that's leading it with a track record. You know, I've walked the walk, I've got the track record of being a performer, an international performer, flying the flag for this country, as well as the ones I'm inherited from. You know, I think they think it's wonderful that something like this is being initiated and led by me.
And the support you're getting from the other organisations you mentioned there, what's that been like? Would you like more of it? Do you think they could help you in ways that maybe you aren't as sort of don't have as much expertise in?
Well, I've never run a business before in my life. I mean, I'm a hands, I'm a sort of practical person. I get on the stage and perform.
Yeah.
And so today I had a meeting, for example, with the Arts Council, and I know the BBC are interested in talking to me about it, maybe making a documentary. I need, at the moment we're looking for probably some private supporters. I know British Council are looking at ways where we might be able to find some funding, and Arts Council, Conservatoires UK, from the conservatoires, I would like them to give scholarships to my young players who are trying to go and study at their institutions.
Chi-chi, thank you very much. Welcome back to Talking Africa here on Arise News. We're joined by the acclaimed classical double bass player, professor and broadcaster Chi-chi Nwanoku. So Chi-chi, let's start then with the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment. Tell us more about that, how you got involved with it, where it's at.
Well, 30 years ago next year, we started as just a gathering around a table, wondering whether we could create an orchestra that played on original instruments as the composers would have heard them back in the 18th century. And not have just one conductor that controlled everything. Because up until that stage, those of us who played on those stylistic instruments, each of those orchestras are only governed by, or conducted ever, by one person. So we only have that one person's approach. And we just thought it would be wonderful to have more control over our own musical destiny. And so that's how it started. And within a year, we had Sir Simon Rattle conducting us, and Sir Charles Mackerras. And we were suddenly on the international concert map. And the rest is history, really. But we've gone on, and of course, being the Age of Enlightenment, that's the middle of the period of music that we play. So we go back as far as Bach, Monteverdi, and as forward as Mahler and Wagner. And next week, I'm playing a world premiere of a double bass concerto at the South Bank.
Amazing. And how do you feel about that? That sounds fantastic.
Well, the thing is, because it hasn't been performed yet. I mean, it's very exciting, because the composer has left it. She's given us a sort of framework, and there's a lot left for our own imagination. So we're being almost asked to improvise, and quite often, I mean, well, jazz players do that every single day of the week, but classical musicians, that's something that's what the challenge is, because we're not familiar with improvising. We're familiar with following the dots that have already been written for us. So it will be, I think, it's a sort of piece that every time you play it, it might sound slightly different. And the proof is always in the performance. However much you practice it, I practice I've got my part under my hand, and everyone's learning their part, and then you only really know it when you perform it.
And
so.
Period-specific instruments, then, are they part of the sort of quest for authenticity?
Absolutely. And for example, I think my instrument is possibly the oldest instrument in the orchestra. It's nearly 400 years old.
Oh my word!
So it's made by Nicholas Amati in 1631 in Cremona in Italy, and he was the teacher of Stradivarius, which a lot of people have heard of. And it's like a Picasso. It's not replaceable. There's 5 or 6 in existence. A bit of a responsibility, but it's the tool of my trade.
Unbelievable.
It's the tool of my trade. And so all the instruments are, or they're either originals from that period or earlier than that period, or they are replicas, copies, very good copies of the originals.
I see. And so over the years then, you've had to form relationships, or orchestras particularly have had to form relationships with record labels, broadcasters, distributors. What do you think that's made it stand out? What do you think that's made it sort of jump out from the crowd?
Our orchestra, I think, because we are self-governing. And so when we invite conductors, we get them on their best behaviour because they want to be because they have to be invited. And so we get the best out of these conductors, and we still have a relationship with Simon Rattle, and we had a relationship with Sir Charles Mackerras until he died just a couple of years ago. Vladimir Yurovsky, who's the principal conductor of the London Philharmonic Orchestra. and Sir Roger Norrington, lots of international conductors, and we also create our programs. We curate them. We have a couple of members of the orchestra who will curate a season, and of course conductors will bring their things that they would like to play as well, and we invite soloists, and I think that it keeps us fresh the whole time. Every time we regroup, it's like a fresh orchestra.
Yeah.
You might not see the exact same people even. We've got the core players, and then we bring in whatever else we need to, if we need a huge amount of players, then we might be 20 players one day and 70 players the next week, We're playing a prom again this year, and we have Simon Rattle got us into Glyndebourne, so we do 2 operas a year at Glyndebourne. And we play at the proms again, and then we're a resident orchestra at the South Bank Centre, which is wonderful. So we have a dozen concerts throughout the season, and actually my concert next week is the final one of the season.
Okay.
So going to go out swinging my bow.
Definitely.
So I think we are attractive, and to this day, even though we've been going nearly 30 years, we're still the only period instrument orchestra that governs itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the relationship you've had with Virgin Records, it's had a residency at London's most prominent arts centre. How important is it to stay away from going too mainstream with stuff, to kind of really create and innovate and be different? How important is that for you?
Sorry, I'm not quite sure you...
in terms of sort of keeping away from sort of mainstream styles of music.
Like, give me an example of something.
I would say stuff that you would be able to buy in stores, or anything that you would hear on the radio perhaps. Is there any way that you try and stay away from what's being done already to try and create something new?
Oh, well we we're one of the few orchestras that actually commission things every 2 years, and we're even talking about commissioning a new piece every year. For an old period instrument orchestra, that's quite something. And it's wonderful because it keeps, it keeps our composers alive, and they need work, as well as our young players. And we have an educational scheme where we bring in students. We audition every year, so we can have young musicians working alongside us in a few of our projects every year, which is fantastic. And many of the orchestras do that now. But we play the standard classics. We play Beethoven 9, we play Beethoven 5, Mozart. We play all the standard classics. But we also we don't play Beethoven 5 necessarily as you might hear the London Symphony Orchestra play it. We'll play the same notes in the right order, but in a more aurora. I don't mean aurora. I mean aurora kind of way. How Beethoven would have heard it, with horns and trumpets with no vowels. They've got to lip it all. Wooden flutes, oboes and things with hardly any keys. Yeah. But we find the notes, and so you've got another kind of energy in the sound. Gut strings, made from the lining of a sheep's stomach, without the shiny metal covering.
Fascinating. Chi-chi, thank you very much indeed.